We live in a world where theft is becoming increasingly digital. We have seen about a 600% increase in phishing attacks in the 13 months. Cybercrime is on the rise in the given global pandemic. Statistically, 28% of employees lack confidence in identifying a phishing email. And ease of identity, account, and credential theft makes everyone an ideal target. Compromise may affect customers, co-workers, friends, and family, and can take its toll on somebody's mental health too. So the importance of cybersecurity awareness is growing more and more as we embrace the digital age. My name is Farooq Naiyer, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. The topic for today's session is cybersecurity awareness and education in Africa. I'd like to kick off today's proceedings with an introduction of our esteemed panelists. So I'll probably start off with Anna first.
Hi, Farooq. Thank you for having me. My name is Anna Collard. I'm the VP of Content Strategy and Evangelist for KnowBe4 Africa. KnowBe4 is a US-based or international company specializing in security awareness, and they acquired us about 3 years ago. Before I was KnowBe4, it was my own company called Popcorn Training, and we specialized in cybersecurity awareness for the African audience. And now, now it's KnowBe4 Africa, and my role there really is to drive awareness across the continent. And I'm excited to be here today, chat to you and April.
Thank you, Anna. We can move on to Aprielle.
Thank you so much, Farooq. My name is Aprielle Oichoe. I'm the Managing Director at Infosphere Limited, which is a cybersecurity company in Kenya. I am one of the founders of Infosphere, and we basically concentrate on everything cybersecurity, whatever, be it from audits, from security awareness and training, all that stuff. And I am also, we also started an organization with Anna, which is called Cyber Heroines, an organization for women in cybersecurity. And I'm also currently the president of Women in Cybersecurity East Africa, which just started about 3 months ago. So we are relatively new in this space. But yes, I have about 12 years experience in cybersecurity. This is a field that I love, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about Africa and cybersecurity education and awareness in Africa. Thank you so much, Farooq.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so, and it's good to get perspectives from two different parts of Africa. Aprielle, I think you're from Kenya and Anna is from South Africa, so it's good to get two different perspectives from two different geographies of Africa. I mean, Africa is a large continent with having, it's one of the largest, second largest continent of the world, if I'm not mistaken, if my geography is not wrong. So let's talk about the subject at hand. So I'd like to kick off the proceedings with talking about the concept of cybersecurity awareness and how early should it actually start? Because, I mean, given the fact that we've got kids who are using handhelds at a pretty early age, who are using internet for online education, or, I mean, during the pandemic, but even beyond that, they're using that for assignments, interacting with the friends and family and whatnot. But how do you ensure that cybersecurity is happening from an early age, especially through the schooling system or beyond that? So, Anna, I would like to direct the question towards you first.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point. I think that, and I mentioned that earlier on today, is in my view, being cyber aware or sort of savvy on how to protect yourself online is no longer a tech skill, it's a life skill. And it should be taught as such from an early age. And what I really like is the example that Finland has said, where they teach critical thinking from a kindergarten level all the way to university level. And I think that if we talk about cybersecurity, critical thinking is one of the key concepts, because whether you interrogate fake news, disinformation, whether you interrogate a phishing email that comes in, a phone call, a social engineering attack, it all comes back to us not being led by our emotions and reacting, but taking that step back, looking at things critically, and only acting when we 100% sure that this is legit. And that is a skill that should be taught from very, very early age.
Mhm.
And I wish that other governments would look at Finland and copy the way they, sort of incorporate that in the curriculums from kindergarten level all the way up. Unfortunately, it's not something that we see happening at all yet in Africa. There are some grassroots levels in South Africa. Google is working with the Western Cape government in Cape Town, for example, to create a cybersecurity curriculum, but it's more sort of maybe 15, 16 years and older. So we're seeing like some initiatives that are starting, but it's very much grassroots levels, if at all. I mean, the research that April and I did in terms of what's happening in the schools across the continent, only 3.7% of the schools currently offer cybersecurity as a subject at all. So it's literally not not happening. There is a bit of awareness happening as part of other IT classes. I think it's about 25%, but that's also not good enough. So yeah, more needs to be done.
Amazing. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about critical thinking. I mean, critical thinking is often something which people are not taught until they reach graduate level studies. I think teaching critical thinking at an early age really helps individuals to think and probably act accordingly, or to perhaps not jump to conclusions or judge an email by the face of it. So I think that's something really good. Yeah, and it also is aligns with the concept of emotional intelligence too, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
it's all connected. But Aprielle, I mean, you're currently based in Kenya, and you're also involved on various other forums too. So, what's your take on cybersecurity awareness at an early age? Are there any steps being taken in jurisdiction where you're currently working on, and what's your perspective on that?
I'll just reiterate what Anna has said. When we look at the schooling system, not much is really being done from an early age, to be honest. But I think it's because cybersecurity became an issue in Africa, well, pretty recently. It may have happened in the West earlier, but in Africa, we are still trying to come to terms with what exactly is cybersecurity, how exactly does it impact me. There has been growth, true to say, there has been growth. However, we are still at that position where policy does not influence what we are doing in terms of cybersecurity. Regulation has just become a reason thing that's being looked at when it comes to cybersecurity, because, hey, we suddenly realize that, you know what, there are 5 billion people on the internet out of a possible 7.5 billion. That's like 2/3 of people are online. And so basically I am exposed. My data is exposed. Africa's data is exposed. But the steps that we have taken when it comes to the younger generation, there is still not much that is happening. And that is something that should change, because at risk here is Africa's livelihoods. At risk here is our kids' psychology. There's a new thing called cyber psychology. I mean, you've just talked about it. Every child, basically, almost every child is on the cyberspace. maybe not so much in Africa because there's still a gap between the West and Africa of about 54% when it comes to digital access. According to an image, I will share it in a bit so that everyone can see, that I have just seen. So this is research that is being done. We are still about 55% away from actually getting to where the world is, but we are getting there, especially because of COVID, where now everyone has had to use some form of gadget for education, for work, even to access government services. We have all had to come online, or rather, let me say, most of us. When you look at rural Africa, we still have challenges in that front. So talking about cybersecurity education from that age is still a long way. There's still a long way for us to go, because first of all, we have to talk about developing infrastructure, which we don't have, both physical and digital infrastructure, which we don't have in place. However, let me not jump the gun, because I'm sure you'll ask a question later, but there are certain things that we can do based on our situation and where we are, because the fact of the matter is that our perception towards cybersecurity must change, because we have to identify the risks that we are facing, especially going towards the fourth industrial revolution, which is already here with us. We are seeing all this eruption of technology and all this eruption of information. Information has become ubiquitous and it keeps morphing every second. We are talking here, the next thing I know, it will be a presentation, it will be shared somewhere. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to make these changes early enough, because our children, our future, the future of Africa's sustainability relies on the cyber ethics that we need to instill at a very early age. And that is something that I am seeing at risk, because our psychology is being impacted. I mean, 50 years ago, we were at a position where I could switch on and off technology as I wanted. Right now, technology is part of me. I use my alarm clock to wake up. When you get into your car to drive to work, the car seat adjusts automatically. I mean, we are using mobile applications and everything to trace our health, heartbeats, how many steps we've taken per day. Basically, our information is all out there. So we must be proactive. Africa must be proactive. We must purpose that we have to change this narrative, and we must change it soon, from a policy perspective, from each individual taking this initiative and saying, you know what, cybersecurity professionals, we are needed and we are important and we are crucial at this point in Africa's growth.
Thank you, Aprielle. Before I jump to my next question, I have a question for both of you, and then you can. And the question is more around awareness about cyber stalking and cyberbullying, because cyber stalking and cyberbullying is something which affects anybody who's using technology in any shape or form. So, what role is your law enforcement agencies playing in this whole space? I mean, it is something which is a reality. I mean, so what's the role of the law enforcement agencies and other organizations who have an influence in this area from the enforcement perspective? Anna, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's not something that our law enforcement thinks very much a lot about, or at least not in South Africa. In fact, we currently running a hackathon challenge called the GovX Initiative, or GovX Innovation Challenge in South Africa, where we looking at the youth to come up with solutions to address online gender-based violence, because it's something that is happening. In fact, it affects 39% of African women are concerned about going online because of the harassment and the stalking and the kind of gender-based violence that does not only exist in the real life, but it happens in the digital realm as well. But it's not at all anywhere in the priority in terms of cybercrime is very low down in the priority of our government. And understandably, they do have very big challenges to overcome. There's poverty, there are war zones in certain areas, but it is definitely something that we have to raise the awareness about and do more and help government. You can't just look at them and say, hey, you need to fix this. And hence why we're running this innovation challenge in South Africa at the moment, where we literally bringing the industry with the government and the youth together to come up with potential solutions. But as it stands right now, if you were a victim of cyberbullying or stalking or any form of online harassment, and unfortunately, sadly, if you're a black woman, it affects you even more so than a white female. There's not much that is done. I mean, I think I read some statistic that only in 15% of the cases do they actually get to any form of reaction. Like even the platforms themselves, I feel, need to take more responsibility and react better to blocking requests or sort of reporting of misogynistic content or kind of inappropriate behavior. But yeah, that's my view from South Africa. So I'd love to hear what April says about Kenya, but I suspect it's similar.
So, yeah. Let me add another spin to this question. So, Aprielle, you're representing various forums as it pertains to women in cybersecurity and some other forums. Now, I mean, I spoke about the law enforcement agencies, but I mean, from the not-for-profit perspective or from a professional organization perspective, are you guys playing any role in creating awareness amongst young people or teenagers as it relates to cyber stalking and cyberbullying?
Well, yes, that effort is there, but it's being done in silos. I think if we got together and just came and formed a united front, it would make more impact. Because from a Kenyan perspective, let me speak from, we have the Communications Authority, which is the regulator, ICT regulator in Kenya. They are doing some work when it comes to, online cyberbullying and all that stuff, online gender-based violence. But of course, they need assistance. There has to be some form of public-private partnership if we are to enhance this conversation. Because much as they try to do that, as Anna has said, the law enforcement aspect of it is not as well, it's not up there. So Communications Authority will do all that they are doing, do these awareness campaigns. They will have pamphlets out for people to read. They will have magazines. They will go, they'll put out everything on their website. However, this is just for the population's consumption. When it comes to the actual incident happening, I have not seen situations whereby it's actually followed or something actually happens. So this is a case where, yes, there is a gap and there can be a lot done if public and private partners come together and say that we are pushing this conversation forward. All the way from the top, from a policy perspective, to an awareness perspective, to an education perspective. I mean, because knowledge is power. Once we know what this is doing and how it's impacting our generation and how it's impacting our livelihoods, then people will be more inclined to react based on a change of perception. And that's where we need to come from, I believe.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your perspective on this. Now, I'll talk about something which both of the panelists spoke about briefly, and that's challenges associated with awareness in rural areas. Now, I'm sure that you both are aware of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the first goal is about no poverty, and goal number 9 is about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Now, given that United Nations is focusing on those things, there are talks about digital inclusion. There are talks about building the basic infrastructure. And I think Aprielle also alluded to the fact that in the rural areas, I mean, in various rural areas, there's basic infrastructure even lacking. So, I mean, people might not even have access to the internet. But the people who do have access to some kind of connectivity, like people do have, like most of the people do have access to smartphones, do have access to some kind of digital services. And these are the people who fall prey to lots of scams, phishing attacks, all those things. So what steps are being taken by various organizations? Like Aprielle spoke about private-public partnerships and other organizations. I mean, we can talk about corporate social responsibility too. So from that perspective, what's being done? So in your specific geographies or in the region or in the whole continent itself. So Anna, What's your take on that?
So I wish I could give you great active examples of what is being done. Unfortunately, again, it's more at grassroots levels that I'm aware of. I know that the telcos and the financial services institutions, again, like in East Africa more so than in West Africa, there's like a sort of collaboration between them. And if you think about it from a responsibility point of view, it is really the telcos and the financial services institutions who should and could be doing something. For example, when you roll out a smartphone or you sell a smartphone, you should do that with some basic awareness tips or training. The other thing I feel is that currently, when you look at what these devices are being used at, it's mainly for sort of entertainment consumptions, like watching videos for entertainment, not for training. And that's something, again, that should be pushed more to, make people aware, hey, you can actually use this for education, not just to watch your selfies, and again, I guess that if we can work together between industry, governments, educational institutions, entrepreneurs, there's so much that is an opportunity there as well for innovative young entrepreneurial thinkers that could come up with solutions that will take all of these infrastructure issues or challenges into account, and offer sort of mobile learning solutions. That I think that there is a ton of opportunity there. But right now, as it stands, I'm not aware of any existing initiative that is driving it actively. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just that I'm not aware of it.
Okay. April, share your perspective on this. What's your perspective?
Okay. Well, I'll say more or less the same thing. We are still at the phase where, for me to reach the rural people and actually talk to them, I have to go there physically. There's still that, and it's very interesting that you brought up SDG 1 and SDG 9. So no poverty and industrialization. And when you say that, I just smiled to myself and I'm like, okay, you know what? We are in the fourth industrial revolution, definitely. And we have aspects of Africa that are so underdeveloped that some people do not even have mobile phones. Yet the mobile penetration in Africa is quite high. But now, when you start telling people, are we going to discuss basic needs or are we going to discuss cybersecurity? There's that element of, okay, what do I need first? So when organizations are looking, you've asked what the public, private organizations are doing. The first thing that people actually would do is because without the digital infrastructure, we actually cannot have this. Unless we are presenting ourselves physically, as I have said. So I have seen some movement towards digital infrastructure empowerment in the rural areas. We had Loom, by Google a few months ago, where they're offering internet to rural areas. And a lot of people had access to internet at that point. But then we know that project ended. So what happens? So we have a situation where at one point you have this, at the next point you do not. In Kenya, for example, we have only one source of we have one electric grid, basically. So if Kenya Power today, for example, went out in some places, a lot of people have not adapted. A lot of people do not have generators. A lot of people have not adapted solar. A lot of people have, so it leaves you hanging somewhere. So you have this at one point, you do not have it at another point. So it's basically a balance. These are the basic needs. This is what we need to even start having this cybersecurity discussion. But as Anna has said, we can use what we have. A lot of people in Africa are using cell phones. So mobile learning would be a turning point for Africa. I have seen companies in Africa, there's one, I forget the name, but they're actually doing rural education using mobile applications, not specifically towards cybersecurity, but this is something that we could adapt. And maybe as cyber heroines, we could take that app and just maybe break down all that information we have and make it accessible as a mobile application. That way, more people will actually be able to access it. The interesting thing about this organization is they actually they don't use internet for their mobile education. They use SMS, which is, But that's what we have. So we could actually just make use of what we have if we hope to progress and to grow as Africa.
Yeah, rightly said. And I think one of the things that, which you said about basic necessities, that's a problem of almost every developing country right now. Cybersecurity is not high on the agenda, yet nations still need to realize that internet connectivity is now being spoken of as a basic human right. There has been a debate on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals talks about that. And I was having a debate with somebody about why is cybersecurity important for developing countries? Because if developing countries would not give importance to cybersecurity, this will impact the basic necessities too, right? Because accessing basic necessities like food, water, electricity. There are talks about critical infrastructure being under attack uh, by state actors and non-state actors, right? So if basic cybersecurity awareness is not given to the citizens of a country, and they're not being trained to, respond to these attacks, or just, like for instance, which could easily be perpetrated through uh, phishing attacks and all that. Because a phishing attack, and I think Anna can relate to this because she works for Know Before. A phishing attack can result in somebody's account being compromised, then resulting in privilege escalation, and then whatnot. All hell can break loose. So really hope that developing countries do realize the importance of cybersecurity and cyber awareness. Now let's switch gears a bit, and let's talk about accessibility of trainings. I mean, as far as I know, just in Africa itself, there are more than 65 languages which are spoken, and the number could be higher. But just, and we are talking about tribal languages, national languages, regional languages. So, uh, and my question is to Anna. Since you're working for a big cybersecurity awareness company, is that how do you make your trainings accessible in different languages and learning styles?
Yeah, so the interesting part is that, and we do obviously deal with a lot of African companies that have, subsidiaries all over. And the feedback that we got is that generally, or at least on a corporate level, the feedback we got is that generally English is actually okay. Like it's sort of, it's okay. Obviously, like as Know Before, we do have content available also in Portuguese and French, even Swahili. And there's a difference between localizing content. That means that you dub the video content, for example, in the language, versus just having subtitles. Like generally, if you have learning content, or especially sort of awareness that uses humor and sort of story-based, that doesn't translate well if you completely localize it. Like like something that is being, I don't know, said in English or in the language that it was produced. If you then dub it, it loses some of that effectiveness. But yeah, we do have obviously we have different content, like also just plain e-learning content, and that is localized by either subtitles as well as creating the actual content in the different languages. A big trend as well that we had to adapt to in the last, I'd say, 2 years, is to make everything accessible. So it has to be, it has to be available for people with learning disabilities, or like you need to use your built-in screen reader and things like that, which again, it impacts the creativity a little bit because you can't use certain colors. You have to make sure that the the contrast is right, and but at the same time, we have to like make sure that the content is available for everyone. But yeah, so we currently have, Know Before is like the Netflix of security awareness, that we have over 2,000 modules of security content in all shapes or form, whether that's video based or e-learning or games. And where we can, we definitely try, especially in Africa, because we try and create content that's more relatable to our local audience, to use local actors, use local sort of a sense of humor where possible, even though that doesn't, it's impossible to translate across 53 different countries and cultures. It's just not. But it's better to use a let's just say it how it is, like the local guys do prefer a local accent to an American accent, for example, or British accent. So we try and rather use a Kenyan or a Nigerian or a South African accent, and then that is, I don't know, it's just accepted better than nothing against American accents, they're great, but it's just it's what it is. Like, try and localize it as best as you can, but it is challenging. Like, you can't create something that suits everyone. So that's my view.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I was just getting my facts straight. There are about more than 140 languages spoken in Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just for Swahili itself, I mean, there's so many dialects. I mean, if you just talk about Northern Africa, just in Northern Africa itself, you'll see various dialects of uh, Arabic itself, Arabic in combination with French, and then you will also see Ethiopian, which is one of the most oldest languages out there. And then when you go towards the southern parts of a part of South Africa, you'll see Portuguese being spoken, French being spoken. I'm not sure if Spanish is being spoken or not, but I mean, so many languages. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that. I mean, it's not just about the language; it's about the culture and style of teaching, which is more relatable to people. If we uh, what's your experience with all this, and in your opinion, what worked and what did not work?
I think Anna has said it. The context and customizing the awareness and training to the local context is actually the winner, because I mean, there are some things that are totally unrelatable to people in Africa in some places. Like, for example, in Kenya, someone would understand protecting your M-Pesa PIN, that's your mobile money application PIN, because I mean, everyone uses it for everything. We pay for our food supplies in the supermarket using M-Pesa. We, we purchase stuff online using M-Pesa. We pay for our gas at the fuel station using M-Pesa. Basically, most of East Africa, let me say, is using M-Pesa. So when you start telling them about cybersecurity and cybercrime, a lot of them may not understand the debit and credit card aspect of it, unless the people who are working, who are employed and everything. But if you tell people about M-Pesa, protecting your M-Pesa PIN, because that's your personal information and it's important, then that makes a difference. So customizing and localizing the content, the training content is key, because different environments are different and experiences are different for everyone. And so I like what Anna is doing. And I think just having it as English, Portuguese, French, and Swahili, at least for Africa, I think covers it, because a lot of people will speak one of those. Definitely, and then the entrepreneurs that Anna was talking about, now we can come up from, and start developing content specific to different dialects and different languages. That would take a lot of work and a lot of input, but at least if we started somewhere, I like that No Before is now offering Swahili. Anna, I didn't know that bit. Thank you for letting me know that that's an important aspect, because a lot of countries in Africa now are actually speaking Swahili. Even both French speaking, Portuguese speaking, and English speaking are actually speaking Swahili. So that's a very interesting development. And I think that will work. That will make a huge impact and a huge difference.
Amazing. Now let's switch gears. I think we had a really good discussion just on the concept of awareness itself. Let's talk about the concept of certification and trainings and its importance. Now, I mean, given the fact that almost every organization would need cybersecurity professionals, be it at a leadership level, be it at the mid-tier level, be it at an entry level, I'm sure that there won't be any exceptions. I mean, you'll see cybersecurity professionals in public organizations, private organizations, and all that. So how do you see certifications and trainings changing? Influencing job requirements and driving the need for more trainings and more competency development in terms of the cybersecurity workforce. So Anna, let's take you first.
So whenever we talk about certifications, there are those, there's the ones for and again, there are two sides of it. I think, personally, I think that they are important because at least it gives you some sort of accreditation, and unless you have a CISSP or some other well-known security certificate, you can't even get to some of the jobs. So it's still good, but at the same time, it doesn't mean when you have a CISSP against your name that you actually know enough about security.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. But I don't know. I found when I was in my 20s, I tried to do as many certifications as possible because also as a woman, you always have that, or I had it, like I had to prove myself even more so. And putting the certificates against my name was sort of an ego thing a little bit, or like but I also learned things, you always learn. So if there's an opportunity to learn and further yourself, you should do it. In fact, what we're currently busy with is, and I'm part of that forum or the group, is we're creating a new certification for security awareness professionals, because that's something that's lacking, right? Like they don't really want. So that will come out actually in Q2 this year. So there will be a formal certificate available for people who are interested in security culture and the human aspect. And it really, the process of coming up with the certification was really interesting because you're bringing in experts from across the world that talk about what does it mean to do this properly and what are the kind of different domains that you need to cover. So yeah, I think in short, it's good to have them. Some of it is also maybe you have to be careful to navigate, like some of it is a bit of a money-making thing. It also depends which area you want to get into. Is it more ethical hacking or is it the compliance side? But like from my point of view, I think if you choose well, it's a good thing. It's easier to do a certification than doing a whole 4-year, I don't know, like a formal university degree in it. And that's in practical, what you really need for as a security professional is someone who's willing to learn all the time, because you don't stop learning, has an attitude to go out there and teach him or herself, because there isn't that, you have to really be on your toes all the time and figure it out on the job. And that attitude is more important than the certification. So if you have that curiosity and that drive to learn and sort of further yourself, then that is what we look for when we in the past when I hired security engineers. We looked for people that had that attitude, and then whether they have a certificate or not, that's sort of by the by. But I still think they're valuable, but they're not the be all and end all of.
Do it,
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me add another twist to this question, Aprielle. Now, from the regulator's perspective and organization's perspective, which could be private or public sector, do these organizations or regulators push for certain certifications for certain job roles?
Well, yes and no. Let me speak for Kenya. I think we are just getting to the point where I find it interesting because if you look at the engineers board and you look at the architects and all that stuff, they have a board, and even the medical profession, they have a board that basically regulates how they behave, their certifications, their education, and all that stuff. For the ICT, for ICT, we've not had that, but that is a discussion that's currently happening in Kenya. So in the near future, if that bill is passed, IT professionals will be required to have some level of certification, whether it is a degree or something for you to be able to practice. Well, I am for it and against it. I don't know if that makes sense, but let me explain why I'm for it, because as Anna said, sometimes we lack the wisdom to actually gauge what actually makes sense for me and what's actually beneficial, vis-a-vis who is just trying to make money out of me. We've had those situations and they're there. I mean, we are in a space where there's good and bad, and we have to learn how to deal with that. So there's a lot of, let me see, there's a lot happening in the IT space that you will believe is actually good, but it's not. So this regulation is a way to weed out some of that stuff. However, going back to what we spoke about, no poverty, I'm still on SDG number 1. Africa, there are a lot of people who cannot afford to go to school. We are talking about cybersecurity education. I personally, let me speak from my experience, which Anna knows. In 2017, 2018, I got admitted to Oxford, University of Oxford, to do my PhD in cybersecurity. I couldn't go. It was too expensive. That dream just died. I could not afford it. And when I approached the Ministry of Education in Kenya, I was told, you know, the kind of money that you are asking could educate 40 Kenyans. Well, there's 2 ways to look at that. There is, you would have had a professor from Oxford to come and educate like about maybe 400, 500, 600 Kenyans. But at the same time, yes, I understand. Back to the basic needs. We have basic needs. So you are looking to go for your PhD. Someone else does not even have a basic degree or college education. And that's where we sit. And so for me, the certification aspect is a good thing. It balances out the lack of the degree. And I like how the UK does it, because having been in the UK for 2 years, I saw that the hiring mechanism takes 2 forms. You either have a degree or you just have the natural ability, the skill. Yeah. And this is where certifications come in. So there, as Anna has mentioned, cybersecurity is all about passion. It's about drive. It's about, you have to drive yourself. And those are the people that appeal to us who are looking to employ. And even ourselves, even for my personal growth, much as, yes, I wanted to do that PhD and I still want to do it, but it's because I'm self-driven, because I want to do it for my own reasons. But I understand that not everyone can do that. So this is where certifications are important, though I would not turn away someone who knows. I mean, okay, let's talk about this. There are some people who have hacking certifications, but when you actually put them to the job and tell them to hack, they can do it. That's another thing. So we also have to look at the type of certification that you're getting. And I feel that a lot of us are stuck in older certifications, but there are some newer certifications that have come that are actually very, very effective and very practical. And I think, in fact, I was compiling a list. I'm part of the Women in Cybersecurity Global Career and Development Committee. We realize there's a problem globally, especially when it comes to hiring. There's a mismatch between the people who are hiring and what they are looking for. So I'll give an example. Lately in Kenya, I have seen a lot of people asking for, we want entry-level cybersecurity professionals, but they must have a CISA or a CIA, is it season? Okay. Now, for you to get that, you have to have had 5 years experience. Yes, you have to have had 5 years experience. So as in, so we need to start looking at the different types of certifications that are available. And some of them, believe it or not, are pretty cheap. In fact, this is one thing that, Anna, I think we need to put up on the Cyber Heroines website, because I have a compilation of about 600 certificates across different cybersecurity fields. And some of them are very affordable. And this is where we are also looking, going back to the public-private partnerships. We need CSR. We need people who are just willing to give back to the community. We need businesses who are looking at Africa and saying, okay, we are at a bad space. We need to be somewhere in the next 20 years for us to be able to compete globally. And so what do? We are going to come together and actually empower our young people or old people. It doesn't matter whatever age you are, as long as you want to learn, you will learn. I know someone who moved from psychology into cyber security within a year. And I found that very interesting, because right now we are talking about the next big thing, which is cyber psychology. the internet and digitization and the cyberspace has impacted on our lives, whether we accept it or not, it has. And this is playing on our psychology. So how do we handle that? So for me, certifications are a good balance to people who cannot get into the workforce without that education that they cannot afford. If you can't afford a degree, by all means, there are certain very good certificates that are practical if you want to be a techie in cybersecurity, and that are managerial and all that other stuff if you want to do the other stuff in cybersecurity. So for me, it's a yes and it's a no. We just have to know how to balance that. Yeah.
No, I would totally agree with that, Aprielle, because I think at an entry level position, it would be really unwise and unreasonable to ask for somebody to have a CISSP and a CISA or a CRISC, because I mean they would need, I mean, to get those certifications, you need to have 4 to 5 years worth of experience. Totally agree with that. And Anna, to the point which you made, one of the things that I often used to hear from my peers is that your qualification and your competency lands you an interview, and your attitude lands you a job. So it all comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you might have somebody with a half a dozen or a dozen certifications right next to the name, but if you don't have the right attitude, they won't be able to land the job. So it all comes to that, I believe. So rightly said, I would totally agree with you. And I think just before I move on to the next question, I think Aprielle, you made a really good point about the fact that private-public partnerships need to happen, especially in terms of funding these trainings and certifications. I mean, VICES does offer scholarships. Leading certification bodies like ISACA, IC Square, EC Council do have provisions for offering subsidized certifications. I know EC Council has got EC Council Foundation. I've been part of the ISACA boards for quite many years. I know they do lots of stuff. I mean, they're doing She Leads Tech and One and Tech and all these things. IC Square has done lots of work. So I think what needs to happen is that somebody needs to, I think a group of people, I think probably you, 2 women who are actively involved in this thing, can work on something and start working on certification paths. I know that in developed countries like in Canada and the US, we do start educating kids at a young age to start coding, to start various cybersecurity skills. I mean, if you look at Israel, Israel has got a cybersecurity army and all those things. They start training kids before they turn into teenagers. So I think we all need to look at those aspects and see how we can align those things. One last thing before I go to the next question is that I'm sure that you guys would be familiar with the NICE framework which they have in the US about cybersecurity education. I think having something like that, I'm sure you might have something close to that in Africa. So rather than reinventing the wheel, you guys can look at the NICE framework. Mm-hmm. But I mean, do you guys have something similar like the NICE framework? Okay.
No.
No.
Okay. So I mean, you can you don't need to reinvent the wheel there, right?
No. And yeah. that's why I made that very important point that I'm actually sitting at the YC's Global Career and Development Committee. And that's one of the things that we're looking at. And we're looking at not just US and Canada and the UK. We are also looking at Africa, because we have come in. Now we have YC's East Africa and we have YC's South Africa. So these are the things that we are looking to actually get on board. And I'm very happy that we have gotten to that point where Africa is now, we can speak at the same stage or the same global stage with the rest of the world. And this is important. And that's why I particularly chose that committee, because I was like, you know what, there is a lot that has to be done about career development in Africa when it comes to cybersecurity. So yes, we are looking at the NICE framework.
Amazing.
As part of that.
That's really good.
And I just want to also throw in here, Farooq, that, you know, in South Africa, at least, like a lot of the bigger corporations, like the financial services institutions, are so desperate because they don't have the skills that they themselves launched academies. Like APSA, for example, they have a cybersecurity academy that they launched in conjunction with some life skill institution. I don't know what they're called now, but and then Standard Bank, for example, they started an internal academy where they offered cross-skilling to their own employee base, and they had over 4,000 applicants from within the bank that were interested in taking part in that internal security academy. So you can see that there is a need and there's things happening. It's just driven more on the ground rather than on a policy level and government level. And what we have to do, obviously, again, as we said early on, as the industry, we need to influence the policymakers and work with them to come up with something that works. And I totally agree. Like, we should look at what the US and the other countries have done so far and not reinvent the wheel, and take what works and adapt it.
Amazing. So we almost at the tail end of our conversation, and I would like to talk about how organizations are utilizing emerging technologies for conducting or imparting trainings and awareness, be it virtual reality or be it augmented reality or be it any other form of emerging technologies. So, I mean, the first question is that people are people using that or not? And if they are, what are the key examples you can talk about? So, Anna, I'd like to start off with you.
So I remember a few years ago, speaking to like a local producer about VR and even a 360, where you can, you don't need a virtual reality or Oculus device or something. You just use your phone, and you can go into different worlds. And it was quite gadgety and cool, but the costs involved in creating it didn't justify the need. So at the moment, I think that from a training point of view, what I'm seeing is that there are innovative approaches in terms of the content itself, like the gamification of it, but not necessarily using all the emerging technologies that are out there. Like, the most emerging thing that we've been trying to do is like deliver content via the mobile or via WhatsApp, because that's more fit for purpose. That's again, that's my view, or what I've seen. So,
I mean, that would qualify as emerging technology too. So your guys are almost there. Aprielle, what's happening in your world or in your side of things? Yeah.
Same thing. Cost is a very big factor of what we adopt and what we cannot adapt. So when it comes to the virtual reality, and that's, I have not quite seen it, but gamification, I know, because we partnered with a company to actually start selling cybersecurity hacking skills through gamification, and that was Circadence. I believe they have a project Aries, which is really, really good. I was really excited about it. But again, when we went to the clients and told them, you know what, you guys need this, you definitely needed to train, because it can actually help you guys with your interviews. You don't have to just, when you're looking for an ethical hacker, how do you tell that these people can actually, So Project Aries gave a very good environment for you to actually prove that you can do it. But it came down to cost again. So, I mean, people are like, wow, are we going to pay that amount of money for one person? Or so it becomes, we are still back to where we are, SDG number 1. That's what we need to deal with in Africa. Once we deal with that, at least to a certain extent, then we'll be able to make this adoption of technology and everything else much faster. So that's my answer. I have not seen much of that. I'm sure it's coming slowly, but it will take us time to get there, unless we have help, of course, from policymakers and all that stuff. If education is made cheaper and it's made more readily available, then I think we can get there.
I forget which SDG is quality education, but I think we have quality education also. I think it's SDG 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's number 4.
Okay, I was close.
You are close, yes.
Okay, we have about 6 minutes left, and I do see about 2 questions which have popped up on the chat window. The first question that I see is, what are some good strategies to engage board members in cybersecurity, cyber awareness training? So that's a good point, because I think we didn't touch upon that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Would like to take that.
I'm happy to take that.
Okay.
So we found that if you, in an organization, I'm talking about an enterprise or corporate, if you wanted to run a successful security awareness program or culture program, you have to start at the top. Like, you need to get your VIPs on board and also get them actively engaged as part of the program. And what I mean by that is not just make them to sign the checkbook for the program, but to actually incorporate them. And that could look like, for example, video, like we record them for a minute and let them share with the rest of the people how they look at security in their home, for example, how important it is for the company. So really getting them, and obviously, you know, like board members or executives never have any time. So you have to, whatever you do with them very quickly, like get them literally within 1 minute, or when you first go in there and do like your initial pitch, just use stats, facts, and keep it to 10 minutes, and show them, you know, the impact and the importance that a positive culture can have on the overall security protection, and the importance of them as leaders in terms of actually influencing the culture, and sort of get them engaged to be part of it, because that way you have their buy-in from day one. They feel as if they own it because they now become an actor or actress in the actual program itself by, you know, using them as protagonists and video recording them, for example. And yeah, you just, I suppose when you initially engage with them, just making sure that you keep it very facts driven and straight to the point, and appeal to the importance of the human factor in the overall security program to get their buy-in. That's my experience. April, do you want to add to that?
Yes. Well, what I have seen is, you know, cybersecurity is very hard to sell. Usually, it's hard. No, seriously, cybersecurity is really hard to sell because, well, people, we don't understand that it's insurance for something that could go bad. Okay, and we have not learned to equate it to money, finances. I think once every cybersecurity professional learns how to equate cybersecurity to money, the board will be very ready to listen, because I mean, these are the people who sit down and say, we have this strategy. And this strategy for the organization means we have objective A, objective B, objective C that we need to meet. And all these are somehow tied to organizational reputation, cash flow, you know, customer retention, all that stuff. So we need to translate all these cybersecurity risks. Basically, what I'm saying is we have to change their perception. They have to start looking at cybersecurity from the money perspective, and we have to make them see it from that perspective. Another thing that makes it hard is because we don't exactly have cybersecurity metrics. So how do you measure success when it comes to cybersecurity? How do you really measure success? Unless you actually hit, you get an incident, then that becomes a point to start measuring, okay, how effective were our information security controls? How effective were our preventive controls? How effective were our reactive controls? How much damage have we experienced so far? So that language, as Anna has said, yes, we must bring them slowly to a point where we can actually have a conversation with them and bridge the gap between all this techie jargon, because I mean, they don't want to hear the techie jargon. They want to see, what are we losing? Are we losing money? Are we losing our reputation? What exactly is it? And we have to come to a point where, as cybersecurity professionals, we can speak that language. We can speak the language that the board and the senior executives understand.
Thank you. Now we just have 1 minute left, and I just have one quick question. And the question is, in Africa, what is the state of cybersecurity education within universities and colleges?
Okay, yeah, we just spoke about that this morning, and April shared some slides. So from the research that we've done, currently only 3.7% of the current educational institutions, both tertiary and sort of lower level, offer cybersecurity as a subject. So it's very, very pretty much non-existent. And yeah, 25% offer it as part and parcel of a bigger IT kind of technology course. So more needs to be done.
Yep, okay. In a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. And I think with that, we are at the hour now. So I'd like to thank both Anna and Aprielle for sharing your thoughts and perspectives on the state of cybersecurity training and awareness in Africa. I learned a lot, and I've got lots of to take away, and I'm sure that the audience also loved, enjoyed the session. So thank you all for joining the session today.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for
for having us.
Thank you.